Beloved, we live in a universe rich beyond measure, a universe charged with the wealth of spirit. There is no poverty in God, no lack in the infinite supply, only abundance, flowing ceaselessly and waiting for us to claim it. Just as one goes to a bank with full assurance that their account will yield what is rightfully theirs, so too must we approach the great storehouse of divine supply, the God Bank. Every good thing, every right desire, every need already has its provision in that spiritual treasury, and the key to drawing it forth lies not in toil, not in fear, but in fearless faith and right word. The world often teaches us that resources are limited, that one must scramble, compete, and grasp in order to obtain what little is available. But Spirit whispers a higher truth: all that the Father has is yours. The invisible realm is the reality, the visible but its shadow. When one learns to speak the word of truth, to stand in unwavering expectancy, the unseen becomes seen and the supply arrives in perfect timing. To withdraw from the God Bank is not a struggle. It is a recognition of what already belongs to you as a child of the infinite. Each thought is a check we write upon the divine. Each word is a signature of faith or doubt. If the word is spoken in fear, the account cannot pay, for fear draws upon emptiness. If the word is spoken in faith, the supply is released, and no earthly obstacle can prevent its manifestation. The universe rushes to honor the claim stamped with the seal of trust. One need not plead or beg, one must only know. For knowledge of truth opens the vault of heaven and sets free the streams of blessing. So many live as spiritual paupers, unaware of their vast inheritance. They cry for bread with diamonds beneath their feet, they ask for pennies when millions lie waiting. Why? Because they have not been taught to make their withdrawal with boldness. The account is eternal, the balance infinite, and yet the timid soul hesitates, fearing that asking is presumption. But presumption is not faith. Faith is the certainty that the check will clear, because Spirit cannot fail. Faith never apologizes for its claim. It stands tall and declares, I withdraw my good, here and now, from the God Bank, and I expect it in visible form without delay. When we learn to keep our hearts free from resentment, from fear, from worry, we keep our accounts open and flowing. The wrong attitude is like an overdraft, it clogs the channels and blocks the flow. Gratitude, joy, and forgiveness are the deposits that increase the balance. Every kind thought, every spoken blessing, every act of trust swells the account, so that when the hour of need comes, the supply is already multiplied and ready. The God Bank never closes, never withholds, never runs dry. Withdrawals can be made at any hour, in any place, for Spirit is both the banker and the treasury, both the gold and the key. To live richly, one must live in constant awareness that supply is not created by man, but released through faith. And so the word is spoken, the claim is made, and the invisible treasure is drawn into form, pressed down, shaken together, and running over. Faith is the key to divine withdrawal. For without faith the door to infinite supply remains closed. Faith is not mere hope, nor is it a vague wishing that something might happen. It is a living, vibrant certainty, a knowing that what is unseen is already established in spirit and must come forth in perfect form. The act of faith is the act of recognizing reality in the invisible before the visible has yet taken shape. One does not need to see the balance of their spiritual account with physical eyes. One must accept it with inner vision, knowing that the God Bank holds every answer, every provision, every form of good already signed and sealed, awaiting the call of faith. Faith is the currency that makes the withdrawal valid, and without it the check remains uncashed, the treasure untouched, though it lies waiting in boundless measure. When a soul understands faith as substance, not as shadow, the whole world changes. Fear no longer dictates the limits of supply, and appearances lose their power to discourage. Faith declares that regardless of outer evidence, the inner account is full and overflowing. Just as one trusts that money deposited in a bank remains safe and available, even though it cannot be seen at every moment, so must one trust that spiritual wealth is stored up, untouched by circumstance, immune to loss, and ready for use. Faith does not ask how or when, for those questions belong to the finite mind. But faith knows the infinite always provides in right ways and right timing. To stand in faith is to stand as a rightful heir, claiming an inheritance without hesitation or doubt. Faith is exercised through word and thought. Every statement of truth is a draft upon the God bank, and the assurance with which it is spoken determines its power. The half-hearted claim draws little, but the fearless affirmation opens wide the channels of supply. Faith speaks as though the blessing is already in hand, for in truth it is. To affirm, "My needs are met in full measure now," is to present a check endorsed with certainty, and Spirit always honors that signature. Faith does not bargain, nor does it beg, because begging assumes lack and bargaining assumes doubt. Faith simply declares, receives, and rejoices. The strength of faith is not measured by intensity of effort, but by the depth of calm. One who strains and strives to believe has not yet entered the rest of faith. True faith is serene, unmoved by storms, unshaken by appearances. It stands still and knows. This calm expectancy is the open channel through which supply pours. When the mind is agitated with fear or anxious striving, the channel narrows and the flow is hindered. But when the heart rests in confidence, declaring that the good is already secured, the invisible substance swiftly takes visible form. Faith is the silence that speaks louder than worry, the assurance that needs no proof because it dwells in certainty. Faith is often tested by delay, yet delay is not denial. The God bank does not close its doors nor reject valid claims, but sometimes the soul must be strengthened to receive its good in right measure. Faith is refined in waiting, for waiting reveals whether trust is genuine or conditional. Many abandon their claim when time stretches out, imagining the account has been emptied or their signature ignored. Yet those who persist, who stand unwavering in the unseen reality, find that the manifestation arrives richer, greater, and more fitting than they dared imagine. Faith does not grow weary. It grows stronger with every test, knowing that each moment of apparent delay is preparing the perfect path for supply to appear. Faith also requires purity of motive. The God bank does not release treasures for selfish grasping or fearful hoarding, for such motives are contrary to the law of spirit. Faith rooted in harmony with divine law, faith aligned with love and service, opens the vault wide. When the motive is true, to express more life, to share more blessing, to manifest more of God's abundance, faith gains unstoppable momentum. The account is not drawn upon to satisfy mere vanity or greed, but to reveal the glory of Spirit in visible form. Such claims are always honored, for they resonate with the highest law. Faith is strengthened through remembrance. Each past demonstration becomes a stone of testimony, reminding the soul that the God bank has never failed and never will. When doubt whispers, one recalls the times when supply arrived in the 11th hour, when provision came in unexpected channels, when needs were met beyond expectation. These memories are like deposits of courage, increasing the soul's balance of trust. Faith grows by use, just as a muscle strengthens through exercise. The more one withdraws in faith, the more confident the withdrawals become, until faith no longer falters, but stands as a permanent consciousness of supply. Faith is contagious. When one soul stands firm, others catch the vibration and dare to believe. A household where faith is spoken and lived becomes a household of miracles, for the atmosphere itself hums with expectancy. Doubt is like a fog that clouds vision, but faith is a light that clears the path, not only for oneself but for all who share the journey. The soul that lives by faith becomes a beacon, proving to others that the God bank is real, inexhaustible, and available to all. Faith is the great leveler, for it makes no distinction between rich and poor, strong and weak, learned and unlearned. Anyone can present a check of faith. Anyone can speak the word of truth and see it honored. The account is not reserved for a select few, but is the inheritance of every child of spirit. Yet few make bold withdrawals, not because the account is lacking, but because they do not believe. Those who dare to believe, who dare to stand in unwavering assurance, discover that heaven's treasury is open without limit. Faith is not theory but practice. It must be lived daily, not only in moments of crisis. Each small act of trust is a withdrawal, each affirmation of supply is a claim made. Over time, faith becomes second nature, no longer an effort but a state of consciousness. Then one walks the earth knowing that whatever the need, the provision is already secured, that no situation is hopeless, that no door is truly closed. Faith transforms life into a continual unfolding of abundance, for it keeps the channel open and the account active. Faith is indeed the key, the only key, that unlocks the vault of spiritual wealth. Without it, the account lies dormant, untouched though overflowing. With it, supply rushes forth in ways beyond imagination, proving again and again that spirit is unfailing, generous, and ever-present. To live in faith is to live in freedom from fear. To live in assurance that every good is already provided, waiting only for the claim of the fearless soul. Words act as spiritual checks. For every word spoken carries power, direction, and creative authority. The spoken word is not a mere sound carried on air, but a command sent forth into the invisible substance of spirit, shaping and calling it into form. Just as one signs their name to a check and confidently hands it to the banker, expecting the amount written to be honored, so too does the soul sign the check of faith through words. Every utterance, whether casual or deliberate, makes a claim upon the unseen storehouse, and the results that return are always according to the words spoken. A careless word may be like a worthless draft that draws nothing but confusion, while a word of truth, spoken with conviction, carries the full authority of spirit and must be honored in due season. Words are seeds, planted into the fertile soil of the subconscious, and they always bring forth after their kind. The subconscious acts as a faithful bookkeeper, recording every utterance and sending it into the treasury of the divine, where law ensures the harvest. If one constantly declares lack, sickness, or fear, those words become checks signed and delivered, and the God Bank pays out exactly what was requested in the form of lack, sickness, or fear's manifestations. But when one learns to speak words of faith, words of health, words of abundance, then the checks are stamped with truth and delivered in kind, and the treasury responds with overflowing supply. Spirit does not discern between careless and intentional words, for law is impartial. The power of the spoken word is always honored, whether for blessing or for struggle. The tongue is the pen, and the spoken word is the ink with which the soul writes upon the ledger of life. Every affirmation is a signature, and the universe never loses the record of it. Words of complaint or worry are overdrafts, creating debt and delay, while words of joy and gratitude are deposits that increase the balance of supply. When one realizes that each phrase spoken is a living instrument of creation, they become watchful, guarding the lips against idle chatter and negative declarations. To speak lightly of misfortune, or to repeat the world's chorus of lack, is to draw against one's account for the very conditions one desires to escape. To speak boldly of abundance, health, and harmony is to present spiritual checks, endorsed with confidence, which the universe hastens to honor. The strength of the word is determined not by volume but by conviction. A whispered statement of truth, spoken from a place of unshakable knowing, carries greater weight than the loudest declaration filled with doubt. Spirit responds not to the noise of the word, but to the authority behind it. And authority is born of faith. Words backed by certainty go forth like fire, cutting through resistance, while words spoken half-heartedly falter before they reach the treasury. Therefore, one must learn to align inner belief with outer expression, speaking only that which is true in spirit, never allowing fear to dictate the phrase, nor circumstance to dictate the confession. Many souls weaken their spiritual checks by canceling them with contrary words. They affirm abundance in the morning, only to declare lack by midday. They speak healing in one breath, only to speak illness in the next. This is like writing a check and then tearing it up before it reaches the teller. Spirit cannot honor a claim that is continually revoked by the tongue. The disciplined soul speaks consistently, holding fast to truth until the visible aligns with the invisible. Once the check of faith is written in words, It must be left in the hands of spirit without interference, guarded by silence against contradictory speech. Words of gratitude magnify the balance of the account. To speak, "I am grateful that my needs are supplied," is to acknowledge receipt even before the outward manifestation, and gratitude is always honored with increase. The God Bank responds swiftly to thankful words, for gratitude is proof of trust. On the other hand, words of complaint drain the account, for complaint is a declaration of lack, and spirit dutifully provides the fruit of that confession. Thus, the wise soul learns to replace every murmuring word with one of praise, knowing that praise multiplies supply and accelerates manifestation. Words also serve as instruments of release. When one is bound by fear, resentment, or bitterness, words of forgiveness are the checks that clear the debt and reopen the channels. To say, "I freely forgive and set all free, and I am free," is to issue a release that lifts the soul from bondage and restores flow from the treasury. Without such words, accounts may be held in suspension, blocked by the clutter of unresolved debts. Forgiving words are like clearinghouse transactions, wiping away the old records and restoring balance to the ledger. The power of such words lies not in sentiment but in law. For the act of declaring forgiveness aligns the soul with divine justice, and once aligned, the flow of supply resumes. The spoken word also sets the tone of expectation. When one speaks confidently of future good, they write post-dated checks upon the God Bank, and those checks will be honored in their time. To declare, "I am walking into new opportunities, and my way is made clear," is to send forth a claim for doors to open, and spirit responds by arranging circumstances to align with that claim. Words spoken in fear of the future, however, are also honored, drawing forth conditions that match the fearful expectation. Thus, one must be ever mindful that every phrase projects a blueprint, and the treasury builds according to the plan spoken aloud. Children and those around us are often shaped by the words they hear. For words are contagious drafts, written not only upon one's own account but often deposited into the consciousness of others. A parent who continually speaks lack may unknowingly write checks upon their child's future, shaping expectation toward limitation. Conversely, words of blessing, encouragement, and faith plant seeds of abundance in the hearts of others, granting them access to accounts they might not have known existed. In this way, words become not only personal instruments but collective instruments, building or diminishing the wealth of those in one's circle. The discipline of words is therefore a sacred practice. Each day provides countless opportunities to write upon the invisible ledger. The wise soul speaks sparingly, never scattering words carelessly, but speaking with intent, with clarity, and with faith. Each word is chosen as though it were currency, for indeed it is. Idle words are like small checks written aimlessly, depleting energy without purpose, while words spoken with authority draw great sums from the treasury of spirit. Once a soul recognizes that their speech is the signature of their faith, they no longer permit doubt or fear to be uttered, but instead guard their tongue as the most precious instrument of creation they possess. Thus, words are never neutral, they are always active, always creative, always honored by the law of spirit. To speak is to sign, and to sign is to claim. Words act as spiritual checks, and every account is paid exactly as written, whether for lack or for plenty, for bondage or for freedom, for sickness or for health. Gratitude increases the account. For every thankful word and every appreciative thought is a deposit into the infinite treasury of spirit. Gratitude is not merely a polite habit or a social courtesy, it is a spiritual force that multiplies and expands whatever it touches. When one gives thanks, even for the smallest demonstration, the unseen account grows, the channels widen, and the flow of supply quickens. Gratitude is acknowledgement that the good already exists, and acknowledgement is faith in action. To thank for what is not yet seen is to declare that the supply is already secured in the invisible, and such a declaration hastens its appearance in visible form. Gratitude is therefore both the recognition of blessings already manifested and the anticipation of blessings yet to come, and it is always honored by increase. Many fail to receive more because they fail to give thanks for what they already have. They overlook the daily gifts, the ordinary provisions, the small demonstrations, and in their blindness they close the channel of supply. The God bank does not respond to ingratitude, for ingratitude is denial of truth, a statement that nothing has been received and nothing is expected. When one complains about their portion, they essentially write a withdrawal slip for lack, and spirit honors it. But when one gives thanks, even in circumstances that seem meager, the act of gratitude multiplies the little into abundance. The account expands because gratitude acknowledges the source and signals readiness for more. Gratitude is a vibration, a tone that harmonizes with the law of abundance. When the heart is filled with thanks, it emits a call that draws supply from every direction. This is why the grateful soul often experiences miracles, for gratitude lifts the consciousness into alignment with divine substance, where blessings flow without obstruction. A mind that dwells on what is missing dwells in poverty, but a mind that dwells on what is present dwells in wealth. Gratitude shifts perception, causing one to see the treasures already at hand, and in so seeing, multiplies them. The one who thanks for a single coin finds the purse filled. The one who scorns the coin finds even that slipping away. True gratitude is not conditional. It does not wait until everything appears perfect, nor does it demand that circumstances conform before it is expressed. Gratitude in its highest form is thanksgiving in advance, the act of praising for what is not yet visible. To say, I give thanks that my good is already mine, even while outer appearances show lack, is to draw from the God bank with irresistible force. The universe must respond, for gratitude is faith clothed in joy. When one gives thanks before the harvest, they set in motion the law of multiplication, and the harvest cannot fail to appear. Gratitude also heals, for it shifts the focus from absence to presence, from pain to possibility, from fear to trust. A body filled with complaints mirrors those complaints in its cells, but a body filled with thanks responds with vitality. Gratitude spoken over health, even when weakness is felt, calls forth strength. Gratitude spoken over finances, even when accounts seem empty, calls forth provision. Gratitude is a medicine for every ill, for it redirects thought from limitation to the boundless source. It is impossible to dwell in true gratitude and remain in despair, for gratitude lifts the heart and clears the vision until the invisible supply becomes visible. Each word of thanks is a deposit that multiplies. Just as in earthly banking, where deposits increase the balance and yield interest, so in the God bank, every thankful word adds to the spiritual account, producing returns in multiplied measure. Gratitude compounds itself, for the more one gives thanks, the more one receives, and the more one receives, the more thanks naturally flows. It becomes a cycle of increase, ever expanding, ever enriching. Those who live in constant gratitude live in constant abundance, for their account is always being replenished by their own thankful acknowledgement. Gratitude is expressed not only in words but also in actions and attitudes. A thankful heart shows itself in generosity, in kindness, in joy. To hoard and cling is to signal fear of depletion, but to give freely is to declare confidence in the endless supply. Gratitude therefore overflows into giving, and giving opens the channel for more to return, just as one who deposits money into a bank can withdraw with ease. So the grateful soul who continually deposits words and acts of thanks withdraws from the God bank without hindrance. Their account is always full because they are always adding to it through appreciation and praise. Even in adversity, gratitude keeps the account alive. When challenges arise, many close their lips to thanks and open them to complaints, and in doing so they cut themselves off from supply. But those who can thank in the midst of trial draw upon reserves greater than they know. Gratitude in adversity is a declaration that spirit is still in control, that provision is still secure, that blessing is hidden even in difficulty. Such declarations are powerful deposits, often producing sudden and unexpected demonstrations that turn trial into triumph. Gratitude becomes the bridge between apparent loss and visible gain, carrying the soul across the waters of fear into the shores of abundance. gratitude is also magnetic. It draws people, opportunities, and resources into the orbit of the grateful soul. Others are drawn to one who radiates thankfulness, for gratitude exudes peace and joy. Those who grumble repel help, while those who thank attract it. The atmosphere of a grateful heart is one of welcome, and in that atmosphere blessings gather. The God Bank responds not only through unseen channels, but often through human instruments, and gratitude calls these instruments forth, aligning them to deliver the provision in visible ways. A life steeped in gratitude becomes a testimony of abundance. Each day becomes a ledger filled with deposits, each word of thanks another entry, until the account swells beyond measure. Gratitude is not a fleeting mood but a continual practice, an inner posture of acknowledgement and trust. The grateful soul sees every circumstance as an opportunity to affirm the goodness of spirit, every moment as a chance to add to the account. They know that nothing is too small for thanks, and nothing too great for praise. Every meal, every breath, every moment is met with acknowledgement, and in that acknowledgement lies the secret of unending increase. Thus, gratitude is not simply a reaction to visible blessings, but the very cause of greater blessings. It is the spiritual principle that ensures the account never diminishes but continually grows. It is the conscious act of recognizing the infinite source, and in recognizing, it multiplies the flow. Each thank you is a coin of gold deposited into the unseen treasury, and each coin gathers interest, returning to the soul in multiplied form. Gratitude increases the account because it is the language of abundance, the vibration of faith, the song that unlocks the vault of heaven and keeps it ever flowing. Fear blocks the flow of supply, for fear is the great enemy of faith. The shadow that clouds vision and clogs the channels through which divine abundance seeks to move. Just as a bank will not release funds if the signature on the check is forged or uncertain, so too will the God Bank withhold when the claim is tainted with fear. Fear is a denial of the infinite source, a declaration that spirit may fail, that provision may run out, that life itself is unsafe. Every fearful thought is a withdrawal slip written for lack, and the law of spirit, being impartial, honors it with corresponding conditions of limitation. Where fear dwells, faith cannot fully operate, and without faith, the account remains untouched though overflowing. Fear acts as a dam, obstructing the natural current of supply. Abundance flows freely when consciousness is open and expectant, but the moment fear rises, the current is blocked, and the soul feels lack where there should be plenty. It is not that supply ceases to exist, for divine substance is infinite and unchanging, but that fear blinds the eyes and closes the hands, preventing recognition and reception of the good already at hand. Fear says, "There is not enough," and the law of manifestation dutifully provides conditions that mirror that declaration. Fear says, "What if I fail?" and failure appears. Fear says, "I cannot," and the path becomes impassable. In this way, fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, continually creating the very conditions it dreads. Fear often masquerades as caution, as practicality, as wisdom, yet beneath its disguise it is always the same distrust in spirit. True wisdom is guided by faith, not by dread of what may go wrong. Many hold themselves back from making rightful claims upon the God Bank because fear whispers of insufficiency, of rejection, of impossibility. They shrink from bold declarations, they hesitate to sign the check of faith, and so they receive only fragments of what might have been theirs in full. The timid soul lives as though the treasury of heaven were meager, rationing blessings as though the infinite were finite. But the courageous soul, fearless in word and thought, claims freely, knowing the account is limitless. Fear has no place in such a consciousness, for perfect faith casts it out. Fear contracts while faith expands. When fear rules, vision narrows to problems and obstacles. When faith rules, vision opens to solutions and opportunities. Fear ties the hands of spirit by dwelling on impossibility, while faith looses the hands of spirit by declaring possibility. This is why fear is such a hindrance to supply. It sets the consciousness in the wrong vibration, tuning the soul to scarcity rather than abundance. The God bank cannot deliver to an account that continually sends signals of mistrust, for the law is exact like attracts like, and fear attracts the very conditions feared. To dwell in fear of poverty is to attract poverty, to dwell in fear of illness is to draw illness. To dwell in fear of failure is to magnetize failure. Fear is a magnet that pulls lack, just as faith is a magnet that pulls supply. Fear thrives on appearances. It looks to the outer world, empty accounts, unpaid bills, closed doors, and concludes that lack is reality. It forgets that appearances are shadows, that true reality lies in the invisible supply of spirit. Faith sees beyond the shadow to the substance, but fear clings to the shadow as though it were all there is. Thus, the fearful soul becomes enslaved to circumstances, forgetting that circumstances are but the outpicturing of inner belief. To overcome fear, one must turn away from appearances and fix the gaze upon truth. That divine supply is endless, that the God bank is always full, that no outer condition can alter the inner reality of abundance. Fear dissolves when the soul learns to trust in the unseen more than in the seen. Fear also breeds hurry and anxiety, which further block the flow. The anxious soul rushes, worries, frets, believing that unless they strive endlessly, provision will not come. But anxiety is another form of distrust, and distrust shuts the door to supply. True abundance flows not in a storm of worry but in the calm of faith. Just as muddy waters cannot reflect the sun, so a restless, fearful mind cannot reflect the abundance of spirit. Peace is the open channel, fear is the clog. To rest in faith, even when appearances are contrary, is to keep the pipeline clear, allowing supply to move unhindered. Fear often disguises itself in the words people speak. Each statement of worry, each confession of lack, each declaration of doom is a verbal check drawn on the account of fear. And just as faith-filled words create abundance, fear-filled words create limitation. To say, "I never have enough," is to order another portion of insufficiency. To say, "I always fail," is to write another script for failure. The tongue becomes the pen of fear, and the ledger of life records accordingly. To overcome fear, one must first bridle the tongue, refusing to speak lack, refusing to confess dread, refusing to sign the checks of fear with careless words. Fear also paralyzes action. Many opportunities are lost because fear chains the soul to inaction. The God bank may release the provision, but if the fearful soul is too timid to step forward, the blessing lies unused. Spirit often delivers supply through open doors, yet fear hesitates to walk through them. Faith strides boldly, but fear falters and in faltering, loses what was already prepared. To live in fear is to continually miss the appointments Spirit has arranged, while to live in faith is to meet them with confidence and claim the provision waiting there. Fear is contagious, spreading quickly through households, workplaces, and communities. One person's fear can infect many, creating an atmosphere of limitation that stifles supply. But so too is faith contagious, and it only takes one fearless soul to shift the vibration and open the flow again. This is why it is so vital to guard against fearful influences, to surround oneself with voices of faith rather than voices of fear. The fearful crowd may clamor about lack, but the fearless soul holds to truth, declaring abundance until the tide turns. Fear also takes many forms: fear of loss, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of the future. Each form is but a mask for the same lie: that spirit is not enough. The cure for every form of fear is the same: trust. Trust that the God bank is inexhaustible. Trust that every right need has its provision. Trust that every closed door hides another opening. The more one trusts, the weaker fear becomes, until it vanishes altogether. Fear cannot dwell in a heart fully surrendered to the truth of divine supply, for trust leaves no room for doubt. Thus, fear is the great block, the dam that stops the river, the shadow that hides the treasure. It is the thief of abundance, the counterfeit signature that cancels the check of faith. Every soul must learn to recognize its subtle forms and banish it with truth, replacing it with fearless words, fearless thoughts, fearless expectancy. Only then can the channel remain open, the account accessible, the supply flowing freely without obstruction. The God bank never runs dry, for spirit is infinite, eternal, and inexhaustible. Unlike earthly banks, which may fail, collapse, or run short of reserves, the divine storehouse holds supply without beginning and without end. Its treasury cannot be diminished by withdrawals, nor can its balance ever decline, for it is sustained by the very nature of the infinite. Every need of every soul across all ages could be met 1,000 times over, and still the account would remain full. The God bank is not subject to seasons, to markets, to conditions of the world. It operates under divine law, which is abundance itself. To withdraw from it is to draw from a fountain that cannot be emptied, for it springs from the source of all creation, a source that continually replenishes itself. When one learns this truth deeply, fear of lack disappears. For many, the struggle of life is born out of the belief that resources are limited, that opportunities are scarce, that only a few can prosper while the rest must go without. But this belief is false, a product of the finite mind that sees only what lies in front of it. The truth is that supply exists beyond appearances, beyond numbers in ledgers, beyond possessions in hand. The invisible account is vast and ever ready, and the God bank never denies a rightful claim. The soul that understands this lives in freedom, never fearing loss, never fearing shortage, for it knows that no matter how much is drawn, more always awaits. The God bank never runs dry because it is rooted in spirit, and spirit is infinite substance. Substance is not matter as the world knows it, for matter decays, crumbles, and passes away, but substance is eternal, invisible, and indestructible. It lies beneath all forms, supporting them, sustaining them, and out of it all visible things are drawn. To depend on matter is to depend on shadows, but to depend on substance is to depend on the real. The God bank operates from this substance, and as long as spirit endures, the account remains secure. Withdrawals do not diminish it, they prove its fullness. Every manifestation of abundance in the visible world is but a token drawn from the invisible storehouse, a small expression of the limitless whole. The idea of exhaustion does not exist in spirit. Just as the sun shines without fear of running out of light, the God bank releases supply without fear of depletion. One may hesitate to make bold claims, worrying that to ask much is to take too much, but such worry is baseless. No one can drain the infinite, no one can overdraw the eternal account. Each soul may withdraw freely, for each has a unique account tied to their divine inheritance, and one's claim does not diminish another's. The God bank is personal and universal at once, vast enough to supply the entire world and intimate enough to meet each individual need. This truth also reveals that poverty and lack are not the will of spirit, but the results of ignorance, fear, and misuse of thought. The account is always open, always full, always waiting. Yet many do not withdraw because they believe the vault is empty, or because they fear they are unworthy. In reality, every soul holds the right of access. The God bank does not favor one above another, it responds to faith, to trust, to the confident word. Those who live in continual shortage are not denied by the bank, but by their own refusal to make the claim. They imagine the vault empty and so receive emptiness. They imagine themselves undeserving and so block the channel. The bank itself remains full, untouched, waiting for them to realize their inheritance. The God bank never runs dry, because giving is its nature. Spirit is always pouring, always supplying, always flowing outward in expression. Creation itself is proof of this generosity. For the universe was formed from the overflow of divine abundance. To believe that the supply could ever end is to believe that spirit could stop being what it is. But spirit is perpetual life, perpetual expansion, perpetual increase. The law of circulation governs it. As one need is met, more supply arises, as one form passes, another appears. This is why life never truly lacks, even when appearances suggest otherwise. The flow may seem blocked, but the river is still full, pressing at the dam until it bursts forth again. The one who trusts that the God bank never runs dry lives with open hands. Such a soul gives freely, knowing that giving does not reduce but multiplies. To cling and hoard is to act as though the account were fragile, easily depleted, But to give generously is to acknowledge the truth of infinite supply. The God Bank replenishes every gift, returning it with increase. For generosity aligns with the law of circulation. The fearful soul hoards and yet loses, while the generous soul gives and yet gains. For giving proves trust in the inexhaustible nature of the treasury. Every act of giving is itself a deposit, ensuring more to come. The God Bank never runs dry, and its doors never close. Unlike earthly banks bound by hours and systems, the divine storehouse is available at any time, in any place. In the midnight of despair, one can make a withdrawal. In the wilderness of trial, one can make a withdrawal. In the silence of prayer, in the rush of daily life, the account is open, waiting ready. It requires no special appointment, no earthly credentials, no human intermediaries. The only requirement is faith, spoken through word and held in thought. At the moment faith is exercised, the withdrawal is made, and the supply begins its journey into visible form. The inexhaustible nature of the God Bank also means that new forms of supply are always possible. One may think that the source of their good is a job, a person, or a certain channel, and when that channel closes, they fear the supply has ended. But the God Bank is never dependent on a single form. If one channel closes, another opens. If one door shuts, another appears. Spirit is creative, unlimited in ways and means, never restricted to a single avenue. To depend on one channel is to mistake the form for the source. But to depend on the God Bank is to know that supply can come through any channel, and that channels can appear where none seemed possible. Those who live in this awareness walk with a quiet confidence, untroubled by shifts in the world. They do not fear recessions, shortages, or instability, for they know that the true account is beyond earthly fluctuations. They see the world's changes as temporary appearances, while the eternal supply remains untouched. Such a consciousness cannot be shaken, for it is rooted in the truth that the treasury of spirit is full beyond measure and will remain so forever. The God Bank never runs dry, because it is not built upon matter but upon the eternal principle of abundance. Matter can diminish, but principle cannot. The principle of abundance is woven into the fabric of creation, and it is this principle that sustains every withdrawal. Just as the law of gravity never ceases, the law of supply never ceases. To live in harmony with it is to draw continually from the storehouse, to live without fear, without want, without the shadow of insufficiency. The truth is absolute, the account is infinite, the treasury inexhaustible, the supply unending.